Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. How are you? And I know that this lighting is not the best lighting. It's a little gloomy outside, which I love gloomy weather, so I'm thankful for sort of a night where I can have the ambiance for reading that I want. But that doesn't make it good for filming, and I know I haven't filmed in a while, so I really wanted to film my October wrap-up for today. So I have a few books that I read for October. I did do the Hocus Pocus readathon and the StrangeAthon. I did pretty good for the StrangeAthon. I got a decent amount of books in. I hope so, because I co-hosted for Team Tricking Kids, so I think we're in the lead. There's still one more day for people to input their books, so we will see how everything turns out, but I kind of hope that we win. If not, I think we'll have a strong second book. I read for October. I read Rise of Fire, which is actually the second book in the duology for Reign of Shadows. And I really liked that set of books. The writing was okay. It was sort of one of the not as developed. I don't know if I want to, but the book definitely had its own set of issues. For instance, they had the main character, which was this lost princess type of girl, but she's blind. And the whole premise on the duology was that when she was born, an eclipse happened and her parents were murdered by someone who wanted to take their place, and she was blind and they didn't discover it till she was 2. And I wish that they had gone in, and I hope this doesn't have any spoilers sort of in it, but they never had a connection between the fact that their world is like post-apocalyptic eclipse kind of scenario and how that ties into the fact that she's blind. I really wish it had, otherwise it would have been perfect. Like it had its own mistakes and stuff, you know, a few things from editing that weren't fixed all the way, but I can let those slide. I really like the hate to love. Well, it's kind of a love to hate to love trope. So I enjoyed the book. It really got me out of the slump that I felt like I was getting into. So it was a really good slump kind of book. But there were a few elements that I wish had been included. And then the next book that I read was the Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. It was okay. The first half of it really was a play-by-play of the movie, basically. And the second part of it, it was okay. It was kind of predictable. It wasn't bad. That wraps up my feelings of that book. Third book that I had read for October was Wink Popping Midnight, and that was by April Genevieve Chisholke. I don't know how I pronounce that name, but it was okay. It wasn't that the book was all that confusing. It had some magical elements to it, some supernatural stuff in it. It was just that it was quick. I felt like it wasn't completely developed. It was kind of flat, honestly, and I'm not sure how other people felt about it. The average rating was 3.28. So it doesn't have the worst rating, but I didn't like it too much. I probably gave it like a 3 stars. It wasn't, it was short, it was easy for a readathon, so that pretty much sums up my feelings on that. The next book that I read was Beast, and that was by Bree Spangler, and that one I actually kind of liked a lot more than some of the other books that I read this month. So that one is basically about this guy, and he is just really tall, and he does have a lot of hair. It seemed like at the beginning I thought that he had that I forgot what it's called, but it's when your body basically looks like it has a lot of fur on. But I don't think that he actually has a medical condition for it. I think he just has a lot of hair in general where you normally have hair. I think if I remember right, he's around like 15 or 16 in the book. So, you know, just getting into being familiar with himself and his body and his interests, and kind of coming into his own kind of time frame of where they're at. And he ends up meeting this person who he really likes and goes, you know, starts to fall head over heels for. And this might be a little spoiler alert. You later find out that the person he fell in love with is actually a transsexual. So originally they were a man who transitioned into a woman, and he didn't realize it at first, and a lot of people kind of put gasoline onto the fire for him, because a lot of people have different opinions about LGBTQ plus people. So he started to feel more of an outcast, and it confused his own feelings because he was already interested in being with this person intimately, and it was sort of coming into his own of, is this something that I can accept? Is this something that I can overlook? I can overlook my own opinions about it because I feel this way about this person. And sort of it was that discovery of himself is basically what most of the book was about. So I'm really sorry if there was any spoilers, but that it was in the LGBT plus section of my audiobooks. So it kind of already gave away the twist that was halfway through the book. So sorry if there were any spoilers, but it was a pretty good book. And then the next book that I read, which actually was the group book for the StrangeAthon, was The Raven Boys, which is the first book on the Raven cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. And it was actually really good. I did like that book. There was a lot of supernatural elements to it. Oh, I was scared to read it because I know a lot of people on BookTube are always like saying, oh, this book was awesome, this book was great. And I'm kind of learning that I don't like all of the books that people say are great. And I was really worried when I picked this as the group book that it was going to be utterly disappointing and be horrible. But it actually wasn't bad. It does take a little bit to get into. I didn't actually get very invested in it until halfway through. And I've heard a lot of people say the second book was eh. The third book is great, and I think the fourth book was kind of eh. So I'm sort of procrastinating finishing like the series. I've only gotten one book into it, and I know there's 3 more to go. So I'm kind of dragging my feet on it. I don't want to ruin how I feel about the books. So we'll get there. The next book that I read, one of the books I read was Toil and Trouble, and it's 15 Tales of Women in Witchcraft. This was actually a pretty good book, and they were all very different. So there were 1 or 2 that was from like the Salem witch trials kind of era, and so you get to see that. Some of them were not very like witchy. They were more of like horoscopy, that they actually are like witches. They're just into some of that stuff. And some of them were like for reals. These are spells. These are the real deal type of things. My favorite one was the Legend of Stone Mary, and that's about halfway through the book. But they were all kind of good. They all were fulfilling. None of them left me completely confused or dazed about what was actually happening. So I did like that. They were all complete, fulfilling short stories, which is really good. So the next book that I read was Circe by Madeline Miller. And I am definitely going to read The Song of Achilles. I really like this book. I did read this on audiobook, so I have like hard copies of some of the books, but sometimes it's just easier for me to be able to listen to the book. And so I ended up doing the audiobook for this, and it did not disappoint. It did take me a couple of chapters to like actually get like totally invested into the story, and some parts of it were a little confusing. But overall, very good book. I would recommend this book. It's of course it's about Circe and sort of how she deals with her Titan side, because she's the daughter of a Titan, but she also is trying to navigate her way through the Olympians, kind of dealing with them. And she ends up being exiled early on into the book. She's exiled and she has her own island. So it sort of goes over how she handles everything. So there are a lot of trigger warnings. So I've seen a lot of booktubers give trigger warnings for this book. There is trigger warnings for bestiality and rape and betrayal, affairs. It's got a lot of hardcore stuff in it. So there are some gruesome parts, but overall it's actually not that bad. And then the next book that I ended up reading was a semi-definitive list of worst nightmares, and this is by Crystal Sutherland. And this was actually pretty good. I did read this on audiobook as well. And at first it starts off as feeling like this is just a really light young adult kind of thing. So basically the premise is that this girl's grandfather, Esther Solar is the girl, and her grandfather met death, or the man who would be death, and death saved him, but that meant that he kept following him around, and he was like the only true friend of death kind of thing. But because of that, everyone in her family suffers from their worst nightmare. So like a couple of people in her family ended up like, one of them was afraid of bees, but he didn't actually die from bees. He died because he ran away from bees and like landed in a river or something. And so since that happened to a couple of people, their family now thinks that whatever their worst fear is going to kill them. So like her dad has locked himself in the basement for 6 years. Mom's a gambling, paranoid. So for that one, there is definitely a trigger warning for self-harm. She actually dedicates this book to suicide prevention. So I think that this is actually a really good book. It starts off really super light, and then like all of a sudden the last quarter of it is like, it hits home. It's a hard hit, and it's just a really powerful message at the end. I know during the reviews a lot of people didn't like sort of the message at the end, but I really liked it. It was sort of about overcoming your fears and how it's okay to show them, but it's also important to show how you overcome them to inspire other people who might feel like they are unable to overcome their fears. And it sort of is saying, yes, they're difficult, it's hard, but you can, and there's resources and people that will help you. So I think it really is, for like a teenager, a really good book to read. I think it has a strong positive message at the end of it. So the next book that I ended up reading was by Neil Gaiman, illustrated by Eddie Campbell, and it's The Truth is a Cave in the Black Mountains. And this book was really short. It's got illustrations in it. So it's a really nice kind of like short graphic story read. It's nice. I probably could have read it in like an hour, but of course I have to get up halfway through and do stuff, and I've got a lot of things going on, so I don't have time to like sit down and just enjoy straight reading. But it was actually pretty good. I really liked the ending. It was a really good revenge story, so hashtag revenge spoiler. But if you can check it out from your library, or if you want to go get it, it's definitely a nice book. I really liked it. I would definitely read it again. I like when there's books that's like, yeah, it's good, and I don't feel like I wasted my time reading it because I don't get that time back. So I liked it. If you like the revenge trope, I would definitely read this if you're looking for a short read for a readathon or something. And then the last two books that I read Dating You, Hating You by Christina Lauren and The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. And they both were really similar. So if you really liked Dating You, Hating You, or The Hating Game, I would definitely give the other one a try. Those are basically, well, one of them is a love, hate to love. So Dating You, Hating You is basically about this girl and a guy, and they start going out. And they go on like one date, I think, but they're from opposite publishing companies. And then after their one date or something, and they had gotten like semi-intimate, their companies actually merge. And so they kind of go through this, we're now co-workers and we were dating, where does that leave us? And then they go into like this hating phase, competition phase, because I guess there was only potentially one job for them, but the boss is a sexist and the guy can't stand it. So it's them going through this minefield of professionalism and dealing with romance in the workplace. So it was actually a pretty nice read. I didn't mind it. It kind of made me realize that I do like contemporary. I usually like to only read YA fantasy, so I was actually pleased that there was a contemporary book that I liked. And then I got really into the hate to love books, so I ended up giving The Hating Game a try. That was probably one of my favorite October reads, if I'm going to be honest. The Hating Game was the best. So basically it's about this guy and a girl, and they are I don't want to say like assistants to the CEO, but they have their own like management roles within the company. But they both came from when two companies merged together. So the CEO from that one company and the other one came together. They actually hate each other, but they got together because they thought they were helping the other one survive in the publishing world. And basically, yeah, they don't like each other, but they have to work well together. So their assistants don't like each other either, because they have completely different mindsets about how business should run, how books should be handled, how things should be done. So they don't get along. So they actually pull pranks on each other all the time and they just do things to annoy each other while being really good at their job. And it goes to, there's a new COO position that's opening up, so they have to fight basically for it and compete and interview for it. So it kind of goes into that, and there's the love part comes in. You can see where it's going, but that one was one of my favorite books. So that was my October wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed. Comment below if there were any books that I read this last month during spoopy season. And I know I didn't actually read a whole lot of scary books, but I think I got a good amount in this month. And yeah, comment below if there's any books that I mentioned that you were going to read. What was your favorite book for October? And what books are you going to read for November? All right, I'll see you later. Bye.